Hello my beautiful hammerheads and welcome back to another Black Library Reviews part 11. The Only Good Orc, a Ciaphas Cain short story written by Sandy Mitchell. So, the hero of the Imperium, Ciaphas Cain. If you know his stories, then you already know what you're in for, because it's Ciaphas Cain, it's funny, it's enjoyable. And there are footnotes by Amberly Whale at the end. And yeah, as I've said, when you know the Ciaphas Cain stories, then you know what you're in for. The story is basically he and Jürgen are in a salamander, as always. It's being shot down, as always. And the main enemy is not orcs, as the title would suggest, but gene-stealer cults, like in many different stories of Ciaphas Cain. And while fighting, they encounter an orc, a single orc, and he manages to trick the orc to kill the gene-stealer cultists, which is pretty enjoyable, as he isn't really fighting the orc as much as he's talking to him with kill that one, kill that one, kill them all, and after that we can fight. So this is really funny, and as you might have guessed, it will give you a good chuckle and maybe a good laugh, as much as you can enjoy a Ciaphas Cain story. The best way to enjoy this short story is, of course, with Ciaphas Cain, it's better to know all the different books and other stories of Ciaphas Cain. There are some mentions of the few adventures from before, and I do believe that this is maybe the short story before another book comes out. So that would be really awesome. Sadly, there isn't really much to talk about with this short story, because we already know Ciaphas Cain, he's an established character, Jürgen is an established character. There is no character development which we need for an upcoming book. And yeah, if you want, stick around until the end, in which I will read the sample for you. But for everyone else, from a burn it to devour it, read it. It's funny, it's enjoyable. It's 8 out of 10 Tanner Cups for Sandy Mitchell's The Only Good Orc short story. So please leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm keen to know what you have to say. And while you're down there, do all the YouTube things, because hitting buttons is fun. Have a great day, my friend. Stay fantastic, stay hydrated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! The Only Good Orc, a Ciaphas Cain short story, written by Sandy Mitchell, read by Beard Almighty. There's never a good time to come face to face with an orc, but doing so while crawling from the wreck of a crashed salamander is one of the least propitious. What made this surprise even less welcome was that until that moment I'd had no idea that any of the creatures were even in the area at all. I suppose I shouldn't have been completely taken aback. Fromenta had been infested with them a few decades prior to the experience, until the guard had arrived to clear them out, a job they'd performed with commendable efficiency. But, as always, there had been occasional localized outbreaks in the years since, which the Frumentan militia had been more than capable of mopping up, at least until they'd turned out to be infested with gene-stealers, turned on one another and sparked a full-scale civil war, which the Astra Militarum had been sent back in to deal with. I'd been dragged into the whole dismal affair, despite being officially retired by now, by virtue of passing through the void station that the task force was assembling around at just the wrong moment. Refusing to tag along at the Lord General's personal request, would have put more of a dent in my undeserved but undeniable useful on occasion reputation than I could afford, not to mention our personal friendship. And then there was Emberly, and my well-concealed avocation as one of her inquisitorial errand boys. A hitherto unsuspected gene-stealer infestation on such a scale was sure to be of interest to the Ordo Xenos, which meant in turn that she was liable to be a bit miffed with me if I passed up the chance to acquire some intelligence on the spot, a complication my life could well have done without. So with carefully concealed reluctance, I let my waiting sinecure on Perlia slide still further into the indefinite future, and embarked for an unremarkable agri-world, little different to a score of others. On arrival, I attached myself to the general staff, made sure my successor wasn't being too much of a nuisance to Zyvan, which she wasn't, as I'd made sure the commissariat would appoint someone pragmatic enough to just let him go on with the job before I left, and busied myself making morale-boosting visits to whichever regiment seemed sufficiently far away from the fighting at the moment, picking up whatever scraps of information I could for Emberly along the way, which was how I'd eventually found myself in the Cascades, an area of high peaks, deep gorges, and spectacular waterfalls, which had been a popular tourist destination away from the intensely cultivized zones in more peaceful times. Many of the gene-stealer cultists retreating in the face of the Guard advance had sought refuge there, counting on the rugged terrain and sparse population to let them effectively disappear. It might even have worked if the narrow, twisting roads over the mountain passes hadn't funneled their vehicles into a limited number of transit corridors, making them sitting waterfowl for our Air Corps Vendetta gunships. I'd just finished a typical visit to one of the forward airstrips, where I'd dispended a few platitudes, shaken a few hands, and enjoyed an indifferent lunch, when we drove into an ambush, presumably set for the supply trucks which kept the flyboys fed. My first intimation of trouble was a las bolt which impacted on the rim of the Salamander's open passenger compartment, followed by a number of others, as I ducked behind the comforting solidity of the armor plate. "Jürgen," I voxed, tapping the comm beat in my ear. "We're taking fire." Not that I was particularly concerned, the sturdy little scout vehicle could shrug off a great deal worse than that, and had probably come as a nasty surprise to the insurgents, who'd no doubt been expecting nothing tougher than a lorry or two they could disable and loot. I scrambled behind the pintle-mounted heavy bolter, which afforded me some protection as I stood and pulled the trigger, hosing down the cliff face from which, judging by the angle of the incoming fire, the bulk of it had come. I was rewarded with a sudden cessation of the rain of las bolts and a few flickers of movement among the scrub, clinging hopefully to the near vertical surface as our assailants scrambled for something more solid to hide behind. That was the sample for The Only Good Orc, a Ciaphas Cain short story, written by Sandy Mitchell, read by Beard Almighty.